Welcome to The Explainer. If you're hanging out with us today, you probably already have a pretty deep appreciation for studying ancient texts. But today we are going to look at something that might completely shift your perspective. We're diving into a specific concept within the Qur'an that reveals this startling and honestly incredibly relevant psychological truth about deception. We're talking about the ultimate deceiver. But we're going to approach this not as some ancient myth or campfire story, but as a deeply analytical study of human control. When most people hear the phrase the ultimate deceiver, or what's widely known in many traditions as the Dajjal, they immediately picture a person, right? We think of a literal monster, this singular ultimate villain waiting at the end of time. But what if I asked you to pause for a second? What if the ultimate deceiver isn't a person at all? What if instead it's a pattern? I really want to invite you to completely reframe everything you think you know about this concept. We're going to rely purely on the text itself to uncover what is actually a timeless psychological framework of absolute control. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the missing word. Now, there is this massive, weighty concept of deception known as the Dajjal. But here is a truly fascinating reality when you look directly at our source material. The Qur'an actually never uses the word Dajjal, not once. Seriously, think about that for a moment. How does a text address the ultimate concept of mass deception without even using the very name that everyone associates with it? Well, it's because instead of just naming a specific literal monster, the text intentionally points us toward a recurring framework of perception control. Basically, it's showing us exactly how the machine works, rather than just giving the machine a name and moving on. Moving right along to Section 2, Pharaoh's ultimate claim. So the text presents Pharaoh as one of the absolute clearest examples of this pattern in action. I want you to forget the image of a dusty mummy in a museum for a second. Let's view him as the archetypal case study for authoritarian control. In the narrative, when one of his own people questions their direction, asking, who is going to protect us from punishment despite our current dominance, Pharaoh's response carries immense, heavy psychological weight. He says, "I show you only what I see, and I guide you only to the path of right judgment." He doesn't just disagree with the guy. He literally attempts to rewrite the rules of reality for his entire population. Which brings us to Section 3, controlling the truth. Now, what's really interesting about this is when we slow down and do a microanalysis of exactly what Pharaoh is claiming here, let's look at that first half. I show you only what I see. On the surface, sure, it almost sounds like a leader just offering their perspective. But in the context of absolute power, it is a strict, undeniable boundary. Pharaoh is actively forbidding the masses from seeing for themselves. He's establishing a singular, mandatory lens through which the entire society must view the world. Let's break down the everyday implications of this kind of mindset. It dictates that you are simply not allowed to see for yourself. You will only see what the authority decides you should see. Imagine for a second what it means when an authority acts as the sole filter for reality. If the sky is blue but the authority tells you they see it as red, well, you are required to see red. It's a complete hijacking of independent human perception. This is the ultimate mindset of a single authority claiming exclusive access to the truth. It's one eye, one perspective, one approved reality. And notice that metaphor of the one eye. In so many traditions, the ultimate deceiver is described as literally having one eye. But the source text explains this through Pharaoh not as some weird physical deformity, but as a psychological framework of absolute perception control. It's a singular, unchallengeable perspective that leaves absolutely zero room for a second opinion. Let's keep building on this. Section 4, demanding blind trust. Guiding us into the second half of Pharaoh's statement, he says, "I guide you only to the path of right judgment." The sheer audacity of this claim is staggering. The deceiver insists that they, and they alone, possess the exclusive monopoly on truth. The implication here is massive. It's saying, I alone know the truth. Therefore, any other interpretation of reality that you might have is inherently wrong. It is nothing short of a demand for absolute obedience. To really grasp how chilling this is, we have to compare two conflicting realities. The natural human instinct is to trust what your own eyes and ears tell you. If you see something, you believe it. But the Pharaoh archetype demands that you actively reject that instinct. You literally must reject your own senses, your own logic, and your own evidence, all in favor of the authority's version. Even if the approved narrative completely contradicts your own lived personal experience, the pattern demands blind trust. And this brilliantly illustrates why Pharaoh is not merely a historical figure in the text. The Quran uses Pharaoh as a timeless psychological blueprint. It shows us exactly how a deceiver operates, isolating your perception, invalidating your independent judgment, and forcing you to rely entirely on their singular narrative. It's an absolute masterclass in the anatomy of control. All right, shifting gears a bit to Section 5, Manipulating Mass Perception. So the source text speaks of the magicians of Pharaoh, but we have to separate the trivial idea of, simple magic tricks with ropes from a much more massive, much more chilling concept. The text explicitly says they didn't just perform parlor tricks. They bewitched the eyes of the people. They manipulated human perception itself. Bewitching eyes means manipulating perception to shape what the masses believe they are seeing. I want you to really imagine the immense psychological power required to do this. This is far, far bigger than just making a rope look like a snake for a brief second on a stage. This is about shaping the collective consciousness. It's about making an entire society see a reality that simply isn't there. Or maybe even worse, failing to see a truth that is sitting right in front of them. So how exactly do they pull this off? They manipulate perception and shape mass belief through massive public spectacles on what the text calls the day of the festival. Now, why a festival? Actually, think about it. Public spectacles are perfectly designed to enforce mass compliance. When everyone is gathered together in a massive crowd, the peer pressure to accept the shared illusion becomes completely overwhelming. If everyone else seems to believe the manipulated perception, you're going to doubt your own senses way before you ever doubt the crowd. It is a brilliantly calculated, terrifying method to solidify control over reality. Let's pull all this together. Section 6, a timeless pattern. Watching this whole concept build across human history reveals an undeniable evolution. It starts with the Pharaoh archetype, which gives us the core blueprint: I show you only what I see. Over the centuries, empires rise and fall, the technology evolves, and the political structures shift. But the fundamental tactic? It remains exactly identical. The source material tells us that many call this ultimate pattern of deception the Dajjal. But the text is teaching us to recognize it not by sitting around waiting for a monster with a specific name, but by understanding the recurring pattern of Pharaoh. It's the singular authority, the manipulation of mass perception, and the strict demand that you reject your own senses. Which leaves us with a final, really vital question. If the names change over time, but the exact same pattern of perception control remains, who is controlling what you see today? I want you to think about the filters on your reality right now. Think about the sources that demand you trust their version over your very own eyes and ears. The ultimate deceiver isn't just some character in a story. It's a system of control. And once you understand the pattern, you can honestly never unsee it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those hard questions, keep trusting your own vision, and keep learning.